You are at a gathering. Someone is telling a story about something difficult that happened to them last week. They are not crying, their voice is steady, they are managing it well. And yet halfway through their sentence you feel your chest constrict, your throat tightens. Tears begin to form, though nothing sad has happened to you. You excuse yourself, go to the bathroom, and stand there trying to understand why you are carrying grief that does not belong to you. You do not know how it got in. You do not know how to get it out. You only know that this happens every time you absorb what others feel and then spend hours, sometimes days, trying to transmute it back into something you can survive. You are not losing your mind. You are not broken. You are experiencing what the healers have always experienced, the ones who could sit with pain no one else would touch, the ones whose bodies became the alchemical vessel for transmuting collective suffering. The ones they called witches, and then they burned them. But the pattern did not die. It returned in you. Welcome to power and myth. In the last video, we explored the druids they could not destroy, the keepers of wisdom who held knowledge in their minds for 20 years, who stood between the visible and invisible worlds, who were hunted to extinction by empires that feared what they carried. Many of you recognized yourselves in that pattern. You named yourselves as seers, as keepers, as those who perceive what others cannot. Today we turn to a different lineage, though the persecution follows the same logic. Today we speak of the healers they condemned, the ones whose gift was not seeing but feeling, not pattern recognition but somatic absorption, not holding knowledge in the mind but transmuting pain through the body. If you have ever been told you are too sensitive, too emotional, that you feel too much, then this video is for you. If you have ever absorbed someone else's despair and spent the next 3 days trying to shake it loose from your nervous system, this video explains why. If your deepest wound has somehow become the thing that allows you to help others while slowly destroying you in the process, you are living what Jung called the wounded healer, and what the world for centuries has called dangerous. The healers were the village's wise women, the ones who knew which herbs stopped bleeding, which plants eased pain, which words soothed the dying. They were midwives who sat with women through birth. They were the ones you went to when the priest could not help, when the doctor did not know, when you needed someone who could be present with what everyone else found unbearable. They did not have medical degrees. They had something older. They had presence. They had the capacity to sit in another person's darkness without turning away. And for that they were called witches, and they were burned. The accusations followed a pattern. She consorts with dark forces. She has unnatural knowledge of the body. She speaks to the dead. She sees what is not there. She feels what others do not feel. She knows things she should not know. She makes people uncomfortable. She unsettles. She disrupts. She must be destroyed. Now tell me if any of this sounds familiar. You have been told your whole life that you are too much, too intense, too emotional, that you overthink, that you read into things, that you see problems where there are none. You have been called dramatic, hysterical, and exhausting. You have been medicated for sensitivity that everyone insists is pathology. You have learned to hide what you feel because when you name it, people look at you as though you have said something obscene, and so you carry it in silence. The weight of what you perceive, the pain you absorb from others, the knowing that sits in your body like possession. This is not mental illness. This is not a disorder. This is the wounded healer's inheritance. You are living the pattern they tried to burn out of existence. And the fact that you are still here, still feeling, still absorbing and transmuting and carrying what others cannot hold, is proof that they failed. The healers keep returning because people keep needing them, because the world keeps producing pain that someone has to metabolize, and that someone is you. The archetype of the wounded healer comes from Greek mythology, Chiron, the centaur who was struck by a poisoned arrow. The wound never healed. He carried it for eternity, and yet from that wound came his gift. He became the greatest healer in all of Greece precisely because he understood suffering from the inside. He could sit with others in their pain because he knew pain intimately. His wound was not in spite of his gift, it was the source of it. Jung took this myth and gave it psychological weight. The wounded healer, he said, is the one whose personal suffering becomes their capacity to heal others, the therapist who survived trauma, the counsellor who understands addiction because they have lived it, the friend who knows how to be present in grief because they have walked that territory themselves. The wound is not an obstacle, it is an initiation. It cracks you open so deeply that you can hold space for others breaking without flinching. For the INFJ, this archetype is not optional, it is structural. You do not choose to absorb what others feel. It happens automatically. Someone walks into the room carrying anxiety, and your nervous system registers it before your mind does. You feel their fear in your chest, their sadness in your throat, their rage in your stomach. You do not have to ask what is wrong. You already know. Your body has become the receptor for emotional information that others either cannot access or have learned to suppress. And then you spend the next several hours trying to process what you took in, trying to understand why you feel devastated when nothing devastating happened to you. This is emotional absorption. And it is not the same as empathy. Empathy is the capacity to understand what another person feels. Absorption is taking their feeling into your own body as though it were yours. You do not just understand their pain, you become the container for it. And this is exhausting in ways that people who do not experience it cannot comprehend. Because you are not just managing your own emotional landscape, you are managing everyone else's. The room you just left, the conversation you just had, the person who smiled and said they were fine, but whose despair you can still feel 3 hours later, like a weight in your lungs. Most people can enter a room, have a conversation, and leave without taking anything with them. You cannot. You leave with everyone's unspoken grief, their hidden rage, their suppressed fear. You carry it home. You lie awake at night trying to distinguish between what is yours and what you absorbed. And the worst part is that most people do not believe you when you try to explain this. They think you are being dramatic. They think you are inventing problems. They cannot fathom that you are quite literally feeling what they feel, that your body has become porous in a way that theirs is not, that you are metabolizing their emotions for them, whilst they remain blissfully unaware that you are doing this. This is why the healers were persecuted. Because this capacity is unsettling, it should not be possible. And yet it is. The witch trials were not about actual magic. They were about punishing women who had access to knowledge and perception that threatened established hierarchies. The healers knew things they should not know. They felt things they should not feel. They disrupted the social order by being present with what everyone else was taught to suppress. And so they were called dangerous and destroyed. But the pattern persisted because the need for them persisted, because someone has to sit with the dying. Someone has to be present with the pain no one else will touch. Someone has to metabolize what the collective cannot hold. But here is what most people never understand about the wounded healer. The gift and the curse are inseparable. You cannot have the capacity to heal without the wound, and you cannot carry the wound without it slowly destroying you unless you learn to transmute it. This is the dangerous part, the part most healers never speak of, the shadow that sits beneath the gift. The shadow of the wounded healer is martyrdom. It is the seduction of believing that your suffering makes you special, that your wound is your identity, that without it you would have nothing to offer. This shadow whispers that you are needed because you are broken, that your value lies in your ability to absorb pain, that if you healed, if you set boundaries, if you stopped taking on what others feel, you would no longer matter, and so you keep the wound open. You refuse the medicine that would close it, because on some level you have made suffering your currency. This is spiritual bypassing dressed as service. It looks like selflessness. It feels like compassion. But underneath, it is a refusal to do your own healing work. It is easier to fix others than to face your own brokenness. It is easier to be needed than to ask for what you need. It is easier to absorb everyone else's pain than to sit with your own, and so the wounded healer who has fallen into shadow becomes the perpetual martyr, the one who is always helping, always giving, always available, the one who collapses from exhaustion and wonders why no one sees how much they are suffering, the one who resents the very people they claim to serve, because deep down they know they're using service as a way to avoid their own healing. Jung was clear about this. The wounded healer must heal themselves first, not because healing makes you a better healer, but because unhealed healers project their wounds onto others. They need others to stay broken so they can keep feeling needed. They create dependency instead of facilitating transformation. They become the saviour who secretly needs people to remain victims. This is the corruption of the gift, and it happens slowly, imperceptibly, until one day you realise you have spent 20 years absorbing everyone else's pain and have never once asked yourself why you think you deserve to carry it. The other shadow is boundary collapse. The INFJ wounded healer often has no idea where they end, and another person begins. You feel their pain, so you assume it is your responsibility to fix it. You sense their need, so you assume you are obligated to meet it. You perceive their struggle, so you believe you must intervene. But this is not compassion, this is codependency. True healing does not require you to merge with another person's suffering. It requires you to witness it without taking it on, to be present without becoming possessed, to hold space without becoming the container. And this is where it becomes genuinely difficult because your entire nervous system is wired for absorption. You do not know how to be present with pain without metabolizing it. You do not know how to care without carrying. And so you have been trained by your own biology and by a culture that rewards self-sacrifice to believe that love means erasure, that helping means disappearing into someone else's need, that healing means taking their wound into your own body and letting it destroy you. But the integrated wounded healer knows something different. They know that the wound is a teacher, not an identity, that their suffering opened them, but they do not have to stay open in ways that harm them, that they can witness pain without absorbing it, that boundaries are not betrayal, that sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do is refuse to carry what someone else needs to carry themselves. This is the initiation, moving from unconscious absorption to conscious witnessing, from believing your value lies in your woundedness, to understanding that your value lies in your capacity to transform. The wounded healer does not heal others by taking their pain. They heal by showing that pain can be transmuted, that suffering can become medicine, that the wound, when honoured rather than identified with, becomes a doorway to something larger than personal survival. Chiron could not heal his own wound, but he spent his life helping others heal theirs, not by carrying their wounds for them, but by teaching them how to live with woundedness in a way that did not destroy them. This is the gift, not fixing, not saving, and not absorbing, but presence, the capacity to sit with what is unbearable and not turn away, to be with someone in their darkness without needing to take that darkness into yourself, to witness transformation without needing to be the one who causes it. The healers they burned understood this. They knew that their work was sacred precisely because it cost them something, but they also knew that service is not the same as self-destruction, that you cannot pour from an empty vessel, that the healer who burns themselves out becomes useless to everyone, including themselves. And so they gathered, they created covens, circles and groves, places where the healers could be held, where they could name the weight of what they carried and where they could rest. Because the healer who tries to heal alone will eventually break under the accumulated pain they have absorbed. This is why you must find your coven, not a metaphor, an actual gathering of those who understand what you carry, other wounded healers who know the cost of this gift, other INFJs who experience emotional absorption and do not need you to explain it because they live it too. The isolation you feel is not native to the archetype. It is the result of a fragmented culture that no longer create spaces for those who carry depth. You must create those spaces now, because the work of the healer is not meant to be done in isolation. It was always meant to be held collectively. And here is the other truth the healers knew. Knowledge of the body, of pain, of transmutation is not passed through text. It is passed through presence. The Druids memorized for 20 years because they held intellectual knowledge. The healers learned differently. They learned by sitting with someone who knew how to sit with suffering. They learned by watching someone transmute their own pain. They learned by being held when they were breaking. This is somatic knowledge. It lives in the body, and it can only be transmitted body to body, presence to presence. This is why you cannot heal this alone. This is why reading about boundaries will not give you boundaries. Why understanding codependency intellectually will not stop you from merging with others' pain. Why knowing you should not absorb what others feel will not stop your nervous system from doing it anyway. You need someone who has walked this path, someone who has learned to hold space without becoming the container, someone who can be present with your breaking without trying to fix it, someone who understands that healing is not about becoming invulnerable, but about learning to carry the wound with grace. So what does it mean to be the healer in a world that no longer recognizes what you do? What does it mean to carry this in an age that calls sensitivity pathology and absorption disorder? It means, first, that you must stop apologizing for your depth. The world will continue to tell you that you feel too much, that you are too intense, that you need to toughen up. These criticisms come from the same place as the witch trials. They come from a culture that cannot accommodate what you carry, and therefore needs you to stop carrying it. But you cannot stop. You have tried. You have spent years trying to feel less, to care less, to absorb less. It does not work because it is not possible. You are what you are. The only question is whether you will carry it with shame or with dignity. It means, second, that you must learn the difference between witnessing and absorbing. This is the lifelong work of the wounded healer. Learning to be present with pain without taking it into your body. Learning to care without carrying, and learning to hold space without becoming the vessel. This does not mean becoming cold. It does not mean shutting down your sensitivity. It means refining it and learning to feel what is yours and what is not. Learning to stay grounded in your own body, even when someone else's suffering floods the room. Learning to say, I see you, I am with you, and I will not take this from you because it is yours to carry. This is not cruelty. This is respect. When you absorb someone's pain, you are telling them they cannot hold it themselves. When you try to fix their suffering, you are denying them the opportunity to transform it. The wounded healer who is integrated understands that their role is not to rescue, but to witness, to be the steady presence that allows another person to do their own work, to reflect back their capacity rather than taking on their incapacity. It means, third, that you must heal your own wound, not close it, heal it. There is a difference. Closing the wound means pretending it never happened. Healing the wound means integrating it, learning what it taught you, allowing it to transform you without letting it define you. Your wound opened you. It gave you access to depths most people never reach. But if you continue to identify as wounded, you will spend your life proving how hurt you are instead of discovering what you can become. Jung called this individuation, the lifelong process of becoming whole, not perfect, not healed in the sense of unmarked, but integrated, able to hold all of yourself, the wound and the gift, the pain and the capacity, the shadow and the light. The healer who has done this work is dangerous in the best possible way, because they cannot be manipulated. They cannot be used. They know their value does not lie in their woundedness. They know they are not here to save anyone. They are here to witness, to be present, to show that transformation is possible. And this is how the healers win. Not by conquering, not by accumulating followers, not by becoming famous for their gifts. They win by persisting, by still being here when the empire that tried to destroy them has crumbled, by carrying the knowing through the dark centuries until the world is ready to receive it again. The witch trials ended, but people kept needing healers. People kept getting sick, kept grieving, kept breaking in ways that medicine could not touch. And so the healers kept returning, not as witches this time, as therapists, as counselors, as friends who know how to sit with suffering, as INFJs who absorb what others feel and somehow, despite everything, transmute it into something bearable. The pattern persisted, because the need persisted. And now, in an era that pathologizes sensitivity and medicates depth, the wounded healers are rising again, not because someone found a grimoire, but because the archetype is activating in thousands of people who are only now discovering that what they carry is not disorder but inheritance. You are part of that rising. Every time you refuse to apologize for your sensitivity, every time you set a boundary even though it feels like betrayal, every time you witness someone's pain without taking it into your body, every time you name your wound as a teacher rather than an identity, every time you gather with others who understand this work and let yourself be held, you are the healer returning. You are proof that what they tried to burn could not be destroyed. You are carrying medicine the world desperately needs, even as it tells you that you are too much. They called them witches. They burned them in village squares. They tried to extinguish the knowing that lived in women's bodies, the capacity to be present with what no one else would touch. But the healers kept coming back, in different forms, in different ages, adapted to different contexts, because the pattern itself cannot be destroyed. The wounded healer is not a historical accident, it is an archetypal necessity, and you are living proof. If this video has named something you have carried in silence, I want to know which moment landed hardest. When did you recognize yourself as the wounded healer? Tell me in the comments. Your testimony helps others realize they are not alone. And if you want to continue exploring this territory, subscribe. This is Power and Myth. This is where your sensitivity is not pathology, it is inheritance. This is where you learn to carry the wound with dignity rather than be crushed by it.